I was sipping champagne at my brother's rehearsal dinner when his future father-in-law thanked me for my generous real estate contribution to their new resort venture. A chill ran down my spine. My family was orchestrating a $150,000 scam behind my back, but they forgot one crucial detail. I always read the fine print. Instead of flipping the table, I smiled, stepped back, and let them build their own grave. Hello, everyone. Before today's story begins, we'd like to share a quick message. YouTube recently removed our monetization, cutting off our income. If you enjoy this story, we humbly ask for just $1 to help pay our staff so they can make a living and keep creating for you. Thank you for saving us. Now, let's begin the story. My name is Maya Stone. I am 32 years old, and until recently, I believed that hard work actually bought you peace of mind. I serve as the lead engineer at Aura Tech Solutions. That is a fancy corporate title that basically means I spend 60 to 70 hours a week untangling catastrophic coding disasters caused by people who get paid more than I do. To keep myself from losing my absolute sanity, I poured every single penny of my life savings into my ultimate sanctuary. I bought a rustic, beautiful beach cabin in Cape Haven. It was not a sprawling mansion, but it was mine. I bought it free and clear after 7 years of surviving on instant ramen, skipped vacations, and putting my social life on permanent hold. The ocean breeze, the quiet mornings. It was the one place where the noise of the world, and more importantly, the suffocating noise of my family, could not reach me. Speaking of my family, let me introduce you to my younger brother, Julian. Julian is 29 years old and suffers from a chronic, untreated condition called delusional grandeur. He proudly calls himself a startup entrepreneur. In reality, he is a serial failure whose only real talent is draining our parents' retirement fund. Over the past 5 years, he has pitched everything from a gourmet dog water delivery service to a driveway rental application that nearly got my parents sued. But Julian finally struck gold, or so he thought. He recently managed to get engaged to Bianca Sterling. The Sterlings are the kind of generational old money family that looks at everyone else like something they just scraped off the bottom of their designer shoes. They are absurdly wealthy, incredibly arrogant, and entirely out of Julian's league. The sheer absurdity of my family's entitlement peaked during what was supposed to be a standard Sunday family dinner. We were sitting around the cramped dining room table, eating my mother's notoriously dry pot roast, when Julian cleared his throat. He puffed out his chest with the self-importance of a Fortune 500 executive announcing a major corporate merger. Maya, Julian began, leaning forward with a smarmy, calculating smile. Bianca and I have been looking at our financial future, and her father has generously offered to bring me in on a massive hospitality project, a luxury resort venture, but, I need to bring some capital to the table to prove I am a serious and equal partner. So, my parents and I have decided that the best wedding gift you could give us is the deed to your Cape Haven cabin. I paused, my fork hovering halfway to my mouth. I looked around the table, waiting for the punchline. Nobody was laughing. They were all staring at me with completely straight faces. "You want my house as a wedding present?" I asked, speaking slowly just to make sure my brain was processing the English language correctly. "It makes perfect sense," Julian insisted, waving his hand dismissively like my life savings were pocket change. "The Sterlings are high society. I cannot just walk into their family gatherings empty-handed. The cabin is the perfect collateral for the business loan I need to partner with Bianca's dad. Plus, you hardly ever use it anyway. You are always working. It is just sitting there gathering dust." I burst out laughing. It was a harsh, bitter sound that startled my mother and made Julian scowl. "Julian, are you completely out of your mind?" I said, dropping my fork onto the plate with a loud clatter. "That cabin is my life savings. I worked myself to absolute exhaustion, pulled endless all-nighters, and sacrificed my entire 20s to buy that property. I am not giving you my house so you can play pretend businessman with your rich father-in-law." "It is not playing pretend," Julian snapped, his face flushing a deep, angry red. "This is my big break. You have a great job at Aura Tech. You make plenty of money. Why are you being so greedy?" right on cue, my parents, Arthur and Helen, chimed in to form the ultimate guilt trip choir. Maya, your brother is right. My mother sighed heavily, looking at me with profound, theatrical disappointment. You are sitting on a pile of money, living so comfortably, while Julian is just trying to build a solid future. Families are supposed to help each other out. Why must you always make things so difficult? My father crossed his arms, glaring at me from the head of the table. You are being incredibly selfish. Maya, this is Julian's one chance to step into the upper class, to secure a legacy for our family name. You already have your career. Giving him that small piece of property is a tiny sacrifice to ensure your brother's success. Do not be the reason he fails. I stared at the three of them, completely dumbfounded by the sheer scale of their delusion. They genuinely believed that my blood, sweat, and tears were just natural resources meant to be harvested for Julian's convenience. I am not giving up my sanctuary to fund a vanity project for a man who cannot even keep a lemonade stand afloat, I said coldly. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked straight toward the front door. The answer is no, now, tomorrow, and forever. I left the house with the sound of my mother crying dramatically, and my father shouting about family loyalty echoing behind me. I drove home gripping the steering wheel tight, fuming with blinding anger. I was entirely convinced that this was just another one of their ridiculous, dramatic phases. I figured they would give me the silent treatment for a few weeks, realize they had zero leverage, and eventually drop the whole absurd fantasy. I had no idea that they had already decided to take matters into their own hands. Usually, denying my family what they wanted triggered an immediate and aggressive campaign of harassment. I expected a barrage of guilt-tripping text messages, tearful voicemails from my mother at 2 a.m, and maybe even a surprise visit at my office. But days turned into 1 week, then 2 weeks, and then almost a full month of absolute, suffocating silence. Not a single missed call, not a single passive-aggressive email. It was the kind of unnatural quiet that happens right before a hurricane makes landfall. It made my skin crawl. The only signs of life came from Julian's social media accounts. I kept tabs on him purely out of self-preservation. Suddenly, his feed transitioned from pathetic complaints about the economy to insufferably smug updates. He posted photos holding champagne glasses on yacht decks with captions bragging about locking down multi-million-dollar syndication deals. He talked about legacy, visionary real estate plays, and moving in silence. It was all incredibly vague, yet dripping with a dangerous level of unearned confidence. Then, the strange digital footprints began. I had installed a discreet, high-end security camera system around the perimeter of my Cape Haven property. Because the cabin was somewhat remote, it was just a standard precaution. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the application expecting to see a stray raccoon or a delivery driver turning around in my driveway. Instead, I saw a gleaming black luxury sedan parked right on my gravel lot. 3 people stepped out. They were not lost tourists. They were dressed in sharp, tailored business suits, holding clipboards and pointing at my roofline. One of them, a woman in a beige trench coat, was actively taking photographs of my wraparound porch and the private beach access path. They stayed for exactly 25 minutes before driving off. It happened again 4 days later. This time, it was a group of contractors in hard hats measuring the perimeter of my front lawn. My stomach twisted into a tight, cold knot. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. The final piece of the puzzle arrived through sheer, unadulterated incompetence. I was clearing out my email inbox, mindlessly deleting promotional spam, when a newsletter from a high-end commercial interior design firm caught my eye. I had never subscribed to them, but my work email address had somehow been swept up in their automated mailing list. The subject line read, "Sneak Peek Elevating the Coastal Aesthetic." I clicked on it. Halfway down the glossy digital brochure, there was a section highlighting their upcoming projects. The text proudly announced their partnership on the highly anticipated Sterling Julian Wellness Resort. Directly underneath that pretentious title was the exact street address of my Cape Haven cabin. All the blood drained from my face. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. They were not just planning something, they were already executing it. I immediately locked my office door, pulled down the blinds, and booted up my personal laptop. My fingers shook slightly as I navigated to the state's public land and property registry portal. I paid the $25 access fee and entered my parcel identification number. I expected to see my name listed as the sole proprietor, just as it had been for years. What I found instead made the room spin. According to the county records, an entity called Coastal Legacy Holdings Limited Liability Company had filed a massive stack of operational and land use claims over my parcel. I dug deeper, pulling the underlying incorporation documents. Julian was listed as the managing director, but the real horror was buried in the annex of a document titled Irrevocable Power of Attorney and Long-Term Lease Authorization. I downloaded the scanned file and zoomed in. There, at the bottom of the last page, was my signature, or rather, a painfully clumsy attempt at forging my signature. It granted Julian comprehensive legal authority to develop, alter, and encumber the property for a period of 99 years. He had literally created a shell company and manufactured a fake legal bridge to hijack my land without actually transferring the deed, probably hoping I would never check the county registry until the resort was already built. But the absolute worst part, the detail that shattered whatever lingering illusion of family loyalty I still held, was located right below the fraudulent ink of my forged name. In the section designated for legal witnesses, there were two distinct, perfectly legible signatures confirming that they had watched me sign my rights away. They belonged to Arthur Stone and Helen Stone, my own parents. They did not just demand my sanctuary. When I said no, they happily committed a federal felony to help my brother steal it. My first instinct was to pick up the phone, call my parents, and scream until my vocal cords gave out. I wanted to confront them with the downloaded documents, demand an explanation, and threaten to call the police right that second. But the blinding anger quickly gave way to a cold, razor-sharp clarity. Screaming would only tip them off. It would give them a chance to destroy evidence, hire defense attorneys, and spin a narrative that I was somehow the unstable, vindictive sister trying to ruin a beautiful wedding. I was not going to give them that luxury. Instead of starting a pointless screaming match, I took a personal day from work and walked straight into the downtown office of Marcus Vance. Marcus was a terrifyingly brilliant attorney who specialized exclusively in commercial real estate fraud and corporate litigation. He was expensive, but looking at his track record, I knew he was worth every single penny. I sat across from his massive mahogany desk and slid the printed registry documents, the forged power of attorney, and the interior design newsletter toward him. Marcus read through the paperwork in complete silence for about 10 minutes. When he finally looked up, he did not look sympathetic. He looked thoroughly entertained. "Your brother is an absolute amateur," Marcus said, tapping his high-end pen against the forged signature page. "He has essentially convinced the Sterling family that he holds a 99-year lease on your land. Based on these fake filings, he has leveraged that non-existent authority to secure a massive initial capital investment from his future father-in-law. Judging by the scope of the wellness resort plans in this promotional email, the Sterlings have already committed at least $150,000 in preliminary renovation funds. They are going to completely gut and upgrade your property to use it as the wedding venue, which will then serve as the grand launch for their new business. So, we file a cease and desist order today," I said, leaning forward. "We shut down the property, lock them out, and I press charges." Marcus smiled. It was the kind of smile a shark gets right before it smells blood in the water. "We could do that," Marcus replied smoothly. "Or we could do something infinitely more devastating. If we send a cease and desist right now, Julian will panic, the Sterlings will pull their funding, and your brother might actually find a way to slither out of the criminal charges by claiming it was a misunderstanding or a clerical error. But right now, the Sterlings are funneling $150,000 into your property under a contract signed by a ghost company. In the eyes of the law, any permanent structural improvements made to a piece of real estate become the property of the true legal owner. Their contract with Julian's Shell Corporation is completely null and void. They have zero legal standing to claim ownership of the upgrades. I stared at him, the sheer brilliance of the strategy sinking in. You want me to let them renovate my house? I want you to let them build you a luxury estate for free, Marcus corrected him, his eyes gleaming. We stay completely silent. We let the construction crews do their jobs. We let the Sterlings pour their wealth into your land. And once the dust settles, we drop the hammer. I left his office feeling a strange, intoxicating sense of calm. The game had completely changed. I was no longer the victim of a family scam. I was the architect of their absolute ruin. As a lead engineer, I possessed a very specific set of technical skills, and I decided it was time to put them to use. That weekend, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I drove down to Cape Haven. I bypassed the main roads and parked my car a mile away, hiking through the wooded path to reach my cabin undetected. I spent the next 6 hours installing military-grade pinhole cameras and highly sensitive audio recording devices hidden inside the air vents, behind the living room bookshelves, and tucked under the eaves of the wraparound porch. I wired the entire system to a secure, encrypted cloud server that would feed directly to my phone and laptop 24 hours a day. I needed undeniable proof of their trespassing. I needed high-definition video and crystal-clear audio of every single contractor, every single Sterling family member, and every single time my brother set foot on my property acting like he owned the place. The hardest part was maintaining my cover. To ensure they remained completely blind to my trap, I had to play the role of the defeated, oblivious sister. On a Tuesday evening, I picked up my phone and sent a casual text message to my mother. "Hi, Mom," I typed, forcing down the bile rising in my throat. "Just checking in. I hope the wedding preparations are going smoothly. Let me know if you need any help with the guest list." Her reply came back 20 minutes later, dripping with the usual condescension. "Everything is wonderful. Maya," she wrote. "Julian and Bianca are very busy securing their future. We are so proud of him. It is a shame you could not see the bigger picture. But please, just know your place right now. Do not cause any drama, and do not do anything to interfere with your brother's bright future. We will see you at the wedding." I read the message twice, a slow, dark smile spreading across my face. I locked my phone and tossed it onto the couch. Oh, I would absolutely be at the wedding, and I was going to bring the whole house down with me. The invasion began on a crisp Monday morning. Through the high-definition lenses of my hidden cameras, I watched a fleet of heavy commercial utility vehicles roll onto my property. They did not just bring a few cans of paint and some new furniture. The Sterling family had unleashed a small army of top-tier contractors to execute a complete, uncompromising transformation of my rustic sanctuary. I sat in my downtown apartment, a hot cup of coffee resting in my hand, watching the live video feed on my dual monitors with a cold, deeply amused smirk. They started with the floors. The demolition crew systematically ripped out my old pine floorboards and replaced them with imported, hand-scraped Brazilian walnut. It was an extravagant flooring choice that cost roughly $35 a square foot. Next came the exterior. A team of luxury landscapers completely bulldozed my overgrown garden. They spent 3 full days installing mature Japanese maples, laying down a custom stone fire pit, and burying an automated, climate-sensing irrigation system under the fresh sod. But the absolute crown jewel of their illegal trespassing was the kitchen. The contractors tore down the main partition wall and installed a massive, commercial-grade culinary setup. I watched them carry in a 6-burner industrial gas range, dual convection ovens, and a solid marble island the size of a small boat. The sheer volume of money they were burning was staggering. While they blindly poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into my personal asset, I was meticulously building an impenetrable fortress of paperwork. Every single evening after work, I logged into my county and local utility portals. I downloaded, printed, and securely backed up my current property tax receipts, the municipal water bills, the electrical grid statements, and the county waste management invoices. Every single document was fully paid, perfectly up to date, and explicitly registered under one legal name only, Maya Stone. I was happily letting them build a magnificent Trojan horse, completely unaware that they were marching it straight into my own heavily fortified castle. About 3 weeks into the massive renovation project, a uniformed courier arrived at my corporate office holding a thick, cream-colored envelope sealed with a ridiculous gold wax stamp. Inside was an invitation printed on heavy, embossed cardstock. It was not a wedding invitation. It was an exclusive, highly pretentious summons to the Sterling Julian Investor Honorary Banquet. Julian, drowning in his own unearned hubris, was hosting a lavish pre-wedding gala at the Grand Horizon, a legendary five-star hotel right in the heart of the city's financial district. The sheer arrogance of the gesture was breathtaking. He had stolen my land on paper, used his future father-in-law's vast fortune to build his fake empire, and now he actively wanted me sitting in the audience to witness his fake coronation. He desperately wanted the ultimate power trip of making the older sister he robbed applaud his fraudulent success. Exactly 2 hours after the gold-stamped invitation was delivered to my desk, my cell phone rang. The caller identification displayed my mother's number. I let it ring 4 distinct times before finally answering, keeping my voice carefully flat and entirely devoid of emotion. "Hello, Mother," I said quietly. "Maya, I assume you received the invitation to Julian's banquet," she started, completely skipping any form of basic, polite greeting. Her voice was a grating, unpleasant mixture of desperate pleading and sharp, authoritative command. "Your father and I expect you to be there. This is a monumental evening for the family. The Sterlings have invited several major venture capitalists, and it is absolutely vital that we present a united, supportive front to their high society friends." I stayed silent for a long moment, letting the dead air amplify her growing anxiety. "Maya, are you listening to me?" My father's harsh voice suddenly cut into the line. He was clearly hovering right over her shoulder on speakerphone. "You are going to put on a nice dress, show up on time, and keep your mouth completely shut. You will smile for the photographers. You will congratulate your brother warmly, and you will absolutely not breathe a single word about that stupid beach cabin. Do you understand me? You will not ruin this family's reputation tonight because you are still holding on to a petty, selfish grudge." It took every single ounce of self-control I possessed not to laugh directly into the telephone receiver. The bitter irony of 2 active criminals lecturing me about family reputation was almost poetic. I took a slow, deep breath, perfectly simulating the heavy, broken sigh of a woman who had finally been worn down and defeated by her toxic family. "Fine," I said softly, injecting just enough weary resignation into my tone to make it believable. "I will be there. I will not cause a scene." "Good," my mother snapped coldly. "We will see you Friday evening." The line went dead. I tossed the phone onto my desk and let a genuine, terrifying smile finally break across my face. They wanted a united front. They wanted a quiet, obedient sister who knew her place. I was going to give them exactly what they asked for, right up until the very moment I burned their entire world to ash. With my attendance firmly confirmed, I shifted immediately into the final, aggressive phase of preparation. I took another afternoon off and met with Marcus, my attorney. Along with a licensed private investigator he frequently utilized for high-level corporate espionage cases, for 5 solid hours. We sat in Marcus's glass-walled conference room, compiling a devastating, absolutely bulletproof legal dossier. The private investigator had done truly spectacular work. He had managed to track down the exact internet protocol address used to electronically register Julian's fake shell company, definitively proving the fraudulent documents were created and submitted from the wireless network inside my parents' own living room. We had hundreds of high-definition video screenshots of Julian strutting arrogantly around my property, giving direct orders to the Sterling contractors. We had the original, certified property deed, the glaringly forged documents pulled directly from the county registry, and a neatly typed, legally binding criminal fraud complaint, fully prepped and ready to be filed with the district attorney's office at 9 o'clock Monday morning. We printed every single piece of evidence on thick, high-quality legal paper and bound the pages securely inside 3 massive, heavy leather presentation folders. One folder was designated for Julian, one folder was meant for my parents, and the final, thickest folder was specifically dedicated to Mr. Sterling, the wealthy man who was currently financing a $150,000 remodeling project on a piece of property he would absolutely never own. The steel trap was now fully set. The poisoned bait had been swallowed whole, and the grand stage was perfectly prepared for the final act of the play. I stepped through the massive gilded doors of the Grand Horizon Ballroom and was immediately hit by a solid wall of suffocating extravagance. The Sterling family had spared absolutely no expense for this investor gala. A live string quartet played soft classical music in the corner. Towering ice sculptures melted slowly on tables draped in imported silk, and waiters in crisp white coats circulated with trays of ridiculously expensive champagne. It was a perfectly crafted illusion of wealth and permanence, completely built on a foundation of spectacular lies and my stolen signature. I walked into the room carrying nothing but a small evening clutch and the quiet, burning knowledge that I was about to drop a nuclear bomb on this entire masquerade. I spotted Julian almost immediately. He was standing near the center of the room, flanked by older, wealthy men holding expensive Scotch glasses. He was wearing a custom-tailored velvet tuxedo that probably cost more than my first car. He was speaking loudly, gesturing wildly with his hands as he pontificated to his future father-in-law's business partners about his brilliant, strategic real estate vision for coastal development. I walked closer, forcing a polite, vapid smile onto my face. Bianca, wearing a diamond necklace heavy enough to anchor a small yacht, noticed me first. She leaned over and whispered something to her mother, Eleanor Sterling. Eleanor turned to me with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Maya? Dear, Eleanor cooed, her tone dripping with the kind of polished condescension reserved for charity cases. So glad you could take a night off from your little tech job to join us. Julian was just telling us how he managed to secure such a pristine, untouched stretch of coastal property. He truly is a remarkable young talent. You know, if you ever want to step out of your corporate cubicle, you should really ask your little brother to give you a few pointers on building a real estate portfolio. I will definitely keep that in mind. Eleanor, I replied smoothly, taking a sip of my sparkling water. Julian's methods are certainly unique. I am constantly amazed by what he is capable of pulling off. Before Eleanor could respond, I felt a sharp, painful grip on my left elbow. I turned to see my mother, Helen, her fingers digging into my arm like a pair of steel pliers. My father, Arthur, materialized on my right side, effectively boxing me in. For the rest of the cocktail hour, they shadowed me like maximum security prison guards. Every single time a guest approached me, my father would instantly step forward to intercept the conversation. Every time I even opened my mouth, my mother would shoot me a venomous, panicked glare that clearly communicated one wrong word would mean my absolute destruction. They were terrified. They knew exactly how fragile their criminal house of cards was, and they were treating me like a walking explosive device that could detonate at any second. A soft chime echoed through the ballroom, signaling the guests to take their seats at the dining tables. The ambient lights dimmed slightly, and a bright spotlight hit the main stage. Richard Sterling, a large, imposing man with silver hair and the booming voice of a seasoned corporate raider, stepped up to the crystal podium. He adjusted his microphone and smiled broadly at the sea of wealthy investors. "Ladies and gentlemen, family, and esteemed partners," Richard began, his voice echoing powerfully off the vaulted ceilings. "Tonight, we are not just celebrating the upcoming union of my beautiful daughter, Bianca, and a brilliant young visionary, Julian Stone. We are celebrating the launch of a legacy. For months, I have been looking for the perfect flagship location for the Sterling Julian Wellness Resort. And thanks to Julian's aggressive, brilliant acquisition of a highly coveted coastal parcel at Cape Haven, we are officially breaking ground. I have personally injected massive preliminary capital into upgrading his land, and I can assure you, The returns on this multi-million-dollar wellness project will be nothing short of historical. The room erupted into polite, enthusiastic applause. My parents clapped so hard, I thought their hands would shatter. They looked up at the stage with a sickening mixture of awe and absolute worship. Then, the atmosphere reached its absolute peak of pure, unadulterated hypocrisy. Julian took the stage. He hugged his future father-in-law, stepped up to the podium, and looked out over the crowd. He paused, letting the silence stretch out, before putting on the greatest, most repulsive acting performance of his entirely fraudulent life. "Thank you, Richard," Julian said, his voice trembling slightly with perfectly rehearsed emotion. "But as much as I would love to take all the credit for this massive leap forward, I simply cannot. Building an empire requires sacrifice. And tonight, I want to publicly acknowledge the person whose silent, generous sacrifice made this massive coastal acquisition possible. My older sister, Maya." The spotlight suddenly swiveled, hitting me square in the face. Hundreds of pairs of eyes turned to look at me. "Maya," Julian continued, wiping a completely fake tear from his eye. "Please, come up here. I want everyone to see the amazing woman who stepped aside so her little brother could fly." The applause swelled again, thick and suffocating. My mother aggressively shoved me forward, whispering harshly for me to go smile and play my part. I smoothed down the front of my dress. I did not look angry. I did not look defeated. I looked absolutely radiant. I walked up the velvet stairs, feeling the heavy, satisfying weight of the moment settling deep into my bones. I stepped up to the podium and gently took the silver microphone from Julian's hand. He gave me a smug, warning squeeze on the shoulder, confident he had completely broken me into submission. I looked out at the glittering sea of billionaires, investors, and my wildly deceitful family. I smiled brightly, tapped the microphone twice to ensure it was active, and subtly reached behind my back, making a sharp, predetermined hand gesture toward Marcus's private investigator, who was currently sitting inside the audio and visual control booth at the back of the massive ballroom. "Thank you, Julian, for that incredibly moving introduction," I said into the microphone. My voice was steady, cutting through the vast, quiet expanse of the ballroom. "It is truly awe-inspiring to stand up here and look at this magnificent gathering. You all came here tonight to celebrate vision, ambition, and the future of the Sterling Julian Wellness Resort. But there is just one tiny, insignificant detail that my brother completely forgot to mention during his beautiful speech." Behind me, the massive digital projection screen had been displaying a looping slideshow of Julian and Bianca looking blissfully happy on various luxury yachts and private golf courses. Suddenly, the screen flickered, the romantic classical background music abruptly cut off, replaced by the dead, heavy silence of a confused crowd. The projector illuminated the dark ballroom with a blinding white light. Displayed across a screen 20 feet high and 40 feet wide was not a picture of the happy couple. It was a high-definition, scanned copy of a certified property deed, right in the center, magnified for every single billionaire and venture capitalist in the room to read, was my full legal name, Maya Stone, designated as the sole, unencumbered owner of the Cape Haven parcel. In the bottom right corner, a massive, brilliant red municipal seal verified its absolute authenticity. A low murmur rippled through the hundreds of seated guests. Julian turned around, his smug smile instantly melting into an expression of sheer, unadulterated terror. He lunged toward the podium, but I took a quick step back, keeping the microphone firmly in my grip. "As you can clearly see on the screen behind me," I announced, raising my voice to ensure it reached the very back of the room, "I am the exclusive legal owner of the land located in Cape Haven. I bought it with my own money. I pay the property taxes, and most importantly, I have never, under any circumstances, transferred, leased, or sold a single inch of that property to Julian Stone, to the Coastal Legacy Holdings Limited Liability Company, or to the Sterling family." Eleanor Sterling gasped loudly, her hand flying to her heavy diamond necklace. Richard Sterling froze, his champagne glass suspended halfway to his mouth, his face turning an alarming shade of purple. Julian, I continued, turning to look my brother dead in the eyes, created a fraudulent shell company. He forged my signature on a counterfeit power of attorney document to convince his future father-in-law to finance a non-existent commercial enterprise on land he absolutely does not own. I raised my left hand, and the private investigator in the control booth cued the next piece of evidence. The giant screen transitioned from the property deed to a mosaic of high-definition security camera videos. The footage was crystal clear. It showed the Sterling family contractors tearing up my floors, planting imported trees, and installing industrial ovens. For the past several weeks, I projected my voice over the rising chaos in the room. I have been quietly monitoring a highly illegal, unauthorized construction project on my private property. I watched as the Sterling family poured $150,000 of their own wealth into completely renovating my house, based entirely on a worthless, legally void contract signed by a con artist. Richard Sterling slammed his heavy crystal glass down onto his table with such brutal force that it shattered into a dozen pieces. He did not look at me. His furious, bloodshot eyes locked onto Julian. The realization hit the older billionaire like a runaway freight train. He had not just been outsmarted. He had been utterly humiliated in front of his elite peers, tricked into upgrading a stranger's house for free by a pathetic, broke 29-year-old boy. "You little rat," Richard roared, his booming voice echoing without the need for a microphone. He charged the stage with terrifying speed. Before Julian could even stammer out a pathetic excuse or run for the emergency exit, Richard grabbed him by the lapels of his custom velvet tuxedo. The older man lifted my brother completely off his feet, his massive hands gripping Julian's throat, violently shaking him like a rag doll. "You stole from me," Richard screamed, spit flying from his lips as the veins in his neck bulged. "You took my money. I will destroy you. I will bury you so deep you will never see daylight again." Bianca leaped out of her chair, her face streaked with black mascara, screaming hysterically for her father to stop, but the damage was irreparably done. "The wedding is completely canceled," Bianca shrieked at the top of her lungs, throwing her massive diamond engagement ring directly at Julian's face as he struggled to breathe in her father's iron grip. "It is over. You are a disgusting fraud." I did not stop there. I signaled the control booth one final time. The screen flashed to the most devastating piece of paper of the night. It was a formal, stamped criminal complaint filed directly with the district attorney's office. The official case number was highlighted in bright yellow ink. "I submitted this criminal fraud and forgery package to the county prosecutor at 9 o'clock this morning," I stated calmly, staring directly at my parents' table. Helen and Arthur were practically paralyzed. The color had completely drained from their faces, leaving them looking like two terrified ghosts. On the giant screen, the camera zoomed in perfectly on the bottom of the forged power of attorney, magnifying the two witness signatures, their signatures. "You see," I said, my voice dropping to a low, lethal timbre that somehow carried over the screaming and the breaking glass. "The authorities are not just coming for Julian. They are coming for the two people who willfully signed their names as legal witnesses to a forged, fraudulent document in an attempt to steal their daughter's life savings. Enjoy prison, Mom and Dad. I hear they do not serve dry pot roast on Sundays." My mother collapsed into her chair, clutching her chest as if she was having a heart attack, sobbing uncontrollably. My father just sat there, his mouth hanging open, staring at the giant, unavoidable evidence of his own absolute ruin. They had sacrificed my sanctuary for their golden child, and in return, they had guaranteed their own criminal convictions. The ballroom was in a state of absolute, unprecedented pandemonium. Wealthy investors were shouting into their cell phones, demanding their financial advisors pull out of anything associated with the Sterling Julian project. Hotel security guards were frantically rushing the stage to pry a homicidal Richard Sterling off my choking, sobbing brother. Bianca was wailing on the floor, surrounded by her panicked friends. I had done exactly what I promised. I had attended the banquet. I had smiled. I had spoken highly of my brother's unique methods, and I had completely annihilated them all. I placed the silver microphone gently onto the wooden podium. I did not look back. I turned around, walked calmly down the velvet stairs, and strolled right through the massive gilded doors, leaving the roaring chaos of my former family far behind me. 6 months later, I am sitting on the newly installed, imported Brazilian walnut floor of my wraparound porch in Cape Haven. A gentle ocean breeze drifts through the air. I am swirling a very expensive glass of red wine, gazing out at the meticulously landscaped garden that I did not pay a single dime to plant. I am completely, beautifully alone. I changed my phone number, blocked every single email address associated with my parents, and filed a permanent restraining order. I open my tablet and take a sip of wine. I am reading a fresh, highly entertaining article from a major business journal. It details the massive, multi-party lawsuit currently crushing Julian Stone. He is facing 3 counts of wire fraud, grand larceny, and corporate malfeasance. My parents are currently out on bail, desperately trying to liquidate their retirement funds to afford a criminal defense attorney for their accessory charges. Meanwhile, I have a state-of-the-art commercial kitchen waiting for me inside, fully paid for by the man who wanted to take everything from me. It turns out, reading the fine print really does pay off. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. We hope you enjoyed it. As an ad-free channel, your support is what keeps us alive. Please support Maya Revenge Stories with just $1 via the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description box or pinned comment. Also, we'd love to connect with you. Please leave a comment telling us which city or state you're listening from. Thank you for standing with us, and see you in the next stories.